Good evening. My name is Joe Phillips, and the call is K8QOE. I want to invite you for another edition of Ham Call. You know, in this program, we spent a lot of time talking about people and personality in amateur radio. And that's important. And there are a number of them that do well. And Troy Smallwood, who's with us today, is another personality you will enjoy. But I'm afraid this time the emphasis will not be on people, because whenever you talk about amateur radio or ham radio, eventually you have to get around to the subject of equipment. And Troy brought some equipment with us today, and he's very equipped himself to do that, and we'll let you know in a second why. But the one caution we'd like to make about any type of equipment is we're going to talk about money and what it costs, and we hope you understand that this hobby has a great variance, a wide range of costs, from new equipment with a lot of bells and whistles, to new equipment that's very stripped down models, to used equipment of that bells and whistles, heavy-ended model and variety, to some of the very basic modes which you can buy as used equipment. So that if you hear some prices, and you will hear that word thousand on occasion, a couple thousand, not to be scared, because that's the high end. And while we'd like people to know that those type of rigs are available, we don't want to scare anyone from the hobby to think that you have to have that kind of money to get your start into ham radio. Not anyone really does, at least that kind of equipment. But the first thing is let's introduce Troy Smallwood. Troy, could you just give your name and your call as you would on the air?
Sure, I'm Troy Smallwood, and my call is N8ASSA, and I operate from, of course, Hamilton, Ohio, where I also work, and that's what we're here to talk about, I guess, today.
Right, he's being a little shy, folks, because what it basically boils down to is we're talking about R&L Electronics on near High Street, near Route 4 in Hamilton, which is what we in ham radio we like to refer to as our local candy store. But it is our equipment store for amateur radio. Troy, let's go back to the days when you were first licensed. You were 12 years old at the time, and your mother was with you for what reason?
Well, basically, she was helping me study to get my license, and she decided it was so easy that she decided to get her license as well as me. As a matter of fact, I failed my first test, and she ended up passing, so she ended up getting a license about 30 days ahead of me.
Your mother has a month in grade on you in this hobby, and this was 12 years ago.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. Now, if I recall, the R&L is Rita and Larry. Rita is your mother, and Larry?
Yes, Larry is my father, and that's how the business name got started.
Okay, now you started in a garage.
Right, that's correct. Every evening, the garage was open between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. Weird hours because my father worked a real job, and he at that time had to he wanted to do something else to help the family and things like that. Plus I was interested in it very much so, and could help him or whatever, but it was really something else the way the thing got started. It basically was a hobby, then it ended up being a small business out of the garage for 3 hours a night, Monday through Friday. Business took off. It was amazing. Every night I'd come home from playing baseball with the high school team or whatever, and couldn't find a parking spot in our own driveway. It was something.
Is it true that actually somebody did come at midnight asking for a piece of coax, and that's when you got thinking?
It was unbelievable. I guess there was a bigger demand in the area for the equipment, and there was no suppliers. Of course, that's the way it is, unfortunately, over the United States. You basically have to mail order your products. You cannot walk into a Radio Shack or a Kmart or whatever and pick up that kind of
not
equipment.
The type of equipment we're discussing now.
Right.
Okay.
And
parts maybe yes, but not the whole line equipment and things of that nature.
Exactly. Right. And there would be phones ringing at midnight. A guy was wanting to make a contact. He knew that this rare country or whatever was going to be on at a certain time, and he just blew something up or whatever, and he needed a replacement piece. And since ham radio, people do get so involved with contesting and personal goals and things like that, you'd be surprised, you know, about how involved they do get. And when they want it, they want it.
Now, R&L Electronics then moved from the garage and then moved to the west side of Hamilton.
Right. We basically got forced into it. The neighbors were starting to complain about people parking in their driveway when ours got filled up.
Right.
We found a moderately priced place downtown Hamilton, and believe it or not, we rented there for 6 years. It didn't seem like it to me. It basically flew by, but I graduated from high school about at that time, so I could work full-time with my father. And we started off with about 3 or 4 employees at that time, and of course are now at about 15.
But at that time, 3 or 4 employees, and you also had you had a bit of a repair center with it.
Well, of course.
You actually had to rent the store next door before you could move.
We just basically seemed like every night you'd go to sleep, and the next morning you'd wake up, and there was less room in the garage than there was less room in the store. The company became bigger and bigger, pushing walls out here and there, and luckily there was stores right next to us that had opened up, and at one time we had 3 pieces of storefront or whatever right there on the block. One was halfway down the alley we have to run to every now and then for stock or whatever, but it was amazing how fast it grew. Then we were fortunately forced into being able to find a better location, a bigger location, and that's where we're at now.
Now, this was a major grocery store, what it was.
Well,
basically.
yes, it was an IGA food store, and it's about 5,000 square feet, and it's a big ham radio store. It's one of the biggest in the United States.
Plus, you're talking about 15 employees.
There's approximately 15 employees.
Mail order operation.
Yes, we have 2 or 3 people in shipping that basically all they're doing every day is trying to keep up with that, and we run about 75 packages a day.
Which also includes, of course, an 800 number and ads in most of the major national ham radio publications.
Now we're to a point to where about half of our business is mail order and out of state.
Oh, okay. So actually, all of this tells us that when we talk about equipment, Troy is the person you want to come to, because Troy can discuss equipment in a big way, and we really do want to get to the equipment. Troy has brought, as you've been shown on the table there, quite a bit of equipment, and we wanted to basically explain what it really means, because the box is one thing, and but when you start hearing these prices, you'd like to know what you're buying. So Troy, we're going to ask you to step by the table in a minute or so here, and basically let's start talking about what these boxes really do. But first off, can you talk for just a second about the pricing arrangement? Because, of course, a lot of the purchases you make are, just the nature of this business, are from Japan. And it has a lot to do with the yen dollar, and there's this and this price structuring has been fluctuating a great deal in the last 2-3 years because of the yen and the dollar and all the things, because you are basically buying foreign. I mean, just with the exception of Ten-Tec, there just are not American manufacturers available in this line.
Very true. Unfortunately, that's the case. We always like to buy American or sell American or whatever, but in this business, unfortunately, it's not that way. You mentioned Ten-Tec. They are a United States company, but the boards of the United States radio is made in Japan, and they're basically assembled here in the U.S. As far as pricing, that's something that it really scares people, and they really don't need to be scared, because you can get into ham radio very, very cheap if you would like, or inexpensive. You can start out with a $100 bill and actually have a radio and be able to get on the air and operate. There's a lot of different facets of ham radio that you can get expensive, or you can be inexpensive. Generally, the radio equipment, which is fortunate for the ham radio operator, holds its value extremely well. It's definitely not like buying a new car and driving it off the lot and losing X amount of dollars. A ham radio piece that sold 10 years ago for, well, we brought one here today for $600 or so, is available today on the market for around $350 to $400. So, you know,
Yeah.
as you can see, the money thing is it has a lot to do with scaring people.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's not that expensive. And
No.
it's
No, that's a good point, because if you started, say, with, say, a $200 station, and then you want to go to a $500 station, you don't start at zero then when you're getting your $500 station. You've got some value in used equipment that someone else can now make use of,
Right.
and then build from there. When you walk into a number of shacks with a lot of equipment and a well-done station, this is a guy that probably started modestly and moved up when you're seeing the end result. It's a good point. Well, I think it's about time if we let's go over to the table and take a look at some of these boxes that have price tags on them and see what they do. So, Troy, if you could step over to the table there and just start giving us a blow-by-blow description of some of this.
sure.
Okay. Now, Troy has got this table arranged. He did a little production work ahead of time for us, and basically going from low end to high end when we're talking not only financially but also with some of the features. And so we're going to start at so that we don't excite or bother or in any case scare anyone off of this hobby, we'll start at the low end into the area of the repeaters, where handheld radios, what certain people refer to as walkie-talkies, are used. Troy, their first piece of equipment is?
Sure, this is what we call as an HT, or a handheld, and like you said, it's a walkie-talkie, but I guess it would be a super walkie-talkie or whatever. One thing that really attracts people, and this is one of the big advantages of ham radio products in our game here we play, is the touch tone pad on here. This is actually a telephone pad that can be used to make telephone calls from the car, from walking around in the supermarkets or whatever, through the repeater systems. Both of these two radios, which would be the low end.
Okay, we're talking here basically new. This would and let's see. This is the ICOM 4AT, but basically the 2AT version in 2 meters, 220 and 440 would be how much new?
Around $250.
Okay,
new.
now, but you can get this used.
Right, as a matter of fact, this one was a used one that we brought with us. It was up there, and you can buy that used for around $175 or so. This wouldn't be considered the very low end, but this would be considered a radio that is actually middle class, middle line.
There are handhelds that you have at the shop and can be found at Hamfest, $75, $100.
Right,
This is
exactly.
This is possible.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, before we go on too far, let's be sure you understand that some of the ranges, because of the repeater system, that this little handheld radio could be up to 25 and 30 miles very easily, just in your hand wherever you're walking.
Right, around in this area, normal coverage is around 25 miles. As technology gets better, this radio on a couple of the repeater systems in town can very well talk 100 miles.
We have a couple of systems that go into Columbus, Ohio, into Lexington, Kentucky. We're talking 100 miles as a radius in either direction, so it basically could be 200 miles in their extremes with a handheld radio.
Right.
And this technology is available in
exactly.
some of the repeater systems.
Right.
Okay, we can go up then to a radio that happens to be a favorite of both Troy's and mine.
Yes, this is the one that me and Joe purchased for ourselves. Matter of fact, this is my radio here. It's a 2-band unit. Now, the advantage of this one is basically what I just said. It's more than one frequency at a time. You can listen to 2 frequencies at one time. So, for example, if a husband and wife are operating and they want to get away from everyone else and make it a semi-private conversation, they can do that on the UHF band or the more private band and still be able to listen to their buddies or whatever on the main band.
Right.
So 2 bands at once on this one.
Now, let's before we go too far away with this one, because there are memory systems in this one available. There's 21 memories on each of the 2 bands, and also this has the capability, besides as the phone line. This also has the capability of being its own pager if
Right.
it wants to be,
Right, that's
and its own
correct.
repeater if it wants to be. I mean, so that when you're talking about the extra money, and this is new what?
Around the $400 to $450 range.
Okay, and when this is used, and this is still a relatively new item, it'll start getting onto the used market probably sometime next summer. Should be around what, $375?
Yeah, around $350, $375.
$375. And for the extra money, I mean, we wanted to be sure they understood that the extra bells and whistles do with it some extra, besides the 2 bands,
Sure.
some extra capabilities.
Right.
You brought a communications receiver for us too, for some people who just want to listen
Right.
on the bands.
Basically listening to the ham operators communicating on the small HT or the local communication stuff. This also would receive the police band and weather band. Sells new for around $450 on the used market at about $350. Basically like a scanner.
Right.
And much more than that as well.
There are much cheaper radios in this line, but this really will bring in quite distances, and also does a sharp job of bringing in voice.
Right, exactly. As a matter of fact, this one will also receive your television channels and put them on a video screen for you if you have like a computer monitor or whatever to hook it to.
Right.
It'll do that as well.
We're moving up to the line of the transceiver. That is 2 boxes in the same, the transmit and receive in the same box, and then we're talking about actual rigs themselves and various bands. Troy, this one is?
Okay, this is an ICOM 725. It's a fairly new radio. It was introduced on the market about 3 months ago. The advantage of this radio is that you can put it in the car and communicate worldwide, or there is a unit that you buy for the house, a power supply unit to run and operate it there as well. It's very small. As far as power output, it's a 100-watt unit. It has all the HF bands, which is the lower frequency bands to
We're
communicate.
talking 10 meters, let's see, 20, 10, 15, 20, 40, 80. Is 160 in here?
Yes, it is.
Okay, 100, even 160 meters.
As in all the new radios are today, they also have what we call a general coverage receiver in them.
Right.
They will also receive other broadcasts other than ham radio, as in VOA, different. I'll cut that one. I hope it cuts that.
Okay, but
Sorry.
and these are relatively not that heavy. I'm thinking what holding on to here. Troy, you can help me out. This is what, roughly about 8, 10 pounds?
Yeah, around 8 to 10 pounds.
Okay, and not too big as well. And again, as he says, this is an automobile installation possible. You can use it in the home, use it in the automobile, and we're talking here
Of about $800.
$800. All right. And this came new? This came as a used piece of equipment.
Yes,
in the range.
Right, that's correct, and usually around $600 to $650 used.
Okay, which of course brings up another point. When they look at that, they say 800 one side and then 650
Exactly.
the other side, and they're thinking that's not such a big gap. Except for this, that means what you'd said earlier. These things tend to hold their resale value and help you when you're moving up and growing with your station.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, we're moving to our friends at Yaesu.
Yeah, this is basically a competitive radio to the one that we just looked at. It sells for about $200 higher, around $1,000. As you can see, there's just a few more features on this that the other one did not have. We also brought in the...
What were some of the basic extra features that we're looking at?
Well, you get what they call electronic keyer unit to send Morse code faster and electronically instead of the old manual way.
It's a
that
part
we're
of a
used to.
memory system using for Morse code rather than a hand key.
Exactly. The other features that it would have would be a better receiver filtering. Other words, if you're on a band that is crowded and there might be adjacent signals that you want to eliminate and only hear the person that you're trying to talk to, this one would filter out the adjacent signals a little better, be able to communicate easily. This unit here that we brought is the matching power supply. Again, this is a 12-volt radio and you can run it in the car and talk worldwide from the car. If you want to bring it into the home, you need a power supply unit, which is this one here, which would sell for around the $200 range new.
Right.
And to be able to operate from the house.
So basically, talk about this is the entire unit you're referring to, and then this would be its power supply if indeed you're in the house.
Correct.
All right. Now, what Troy has done here is that this is a older model of the Yaesu, very old model of the Yaesu, again showing a model that not only, this is still in use by numerous hams, but not only do they hold their value, but this model still can be of great use in ham radio. This is the old FT101. This is where Yaesu got its start.
Right, that's correct. This is the most popular radio that Yaesu ever produced. They're very plentiful on the used market. This is one of the best starter radios for anyone. If they have no idea what ham radio is about, they're wanting to buy a radio for around the $400 range and hold its value extremely well, that would be this one here. Now, the reason that it made its popularity or whatever 10 years ago is when the radio was produced. It was pretty much ahead of everyone else's technology at that time. The difference between this and the new radio that is now superseded this one, which is the one we have just looked at, is that partially it is tubes instead of completely transistors.
Or what they refer to in engineering as solid state.
Correct,
state.
right. So the operations isn't quite as convenient in the transmitter stages. You have to peak and load 3 controls when you change bands. Although the radio will put out the same amount of power as the new ones on the market, and it'll talk just as far.
Something like operating an automatic transmission car instead of your manual transmission.
Exactly.
When you had to move in.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to move up to the Cadillac. I hope, and actually our friends and from those other car divisions are going to be a little upset using that term, but people understand that term as well. And this is a Kenwood.
Yes,
this
it
is the big one.
I'm not saying that Kenwood is the Cadillac manufacturer, although the other manufacturers have top-of-the-line ones. This is the one we just had.
This is the top-of-line feature one you brought was the Kenwood model.
Correct.
There's a Yaesu model
and an ICOM.
And ICOM as well.
And
yes.
all that. The advantage of this radio, just about everything on it is automatic. You almost don't have to do anything but talk. It'll almost do that for you. As you can see, we have a digital readout unit here that you can tell precisely exactly what frequency that you are on. The power supply unit is built in, not like the other radios that you have to buy extra for, as we looked at previously.
What are we talking about here in the way of money on this one? This is
$2,000.
Okay. In the used market, when this one gets, that will still be.
Okay. Right now, it's running around $1,600 on the used market.
Still like anything else, even at the high end, a ham radio operation is still will hold its value. Also, he brought some books. Like any other candy store, just always like to show whenever we can call books because these act like telephone directories, both foreign and domestic. I'm going to explain that very quickly. The call book has both a North American listings of all the listings of hams in North America, and then there's what they call a DX listing, which is all worldwide, not North American. And also, you brought in Tune In the Radio. People like to get into ham radio want to know that there is an actual package that you can purchase to get into ham radio too, and through RNL. You might want to, there is a number that if they have more information in the hobby, you might want to tell them what that is, and we'll put that up on the screen for them too.
Sure. We put a catalog out, and if you want to request a catalog at no charge, you can call 868-6399, and anyone that answers that phone would love to take care of the catalog request for you.
As you see in this hobby, equipment is important. It isn't expensive in the true mode of things, but it can be. In other words, it covers quite a range of tastes and quite a range of wallet size, as is most hobbies. A ham radio is an interesting hobby to get into, and what Troy Smallwood, and we want to thank him for joining us today, has shown you is a little taste of some of the things that are available. Troy reminds us that there are other modes, packet radio, ATV, for amateur television, quite a few other modes. If just the mere talking on the radio isn't quite your speed, and there are other things you can do in a broadcast hobby, Ham Radio has it for you, and they have it at the store too. So again, want to say this has been another edition of Ham Call. Want to thank Troy for joining us, and thank you as well.
This program was independently produced through Waycross Community Television, the access partnership of Forest Park, Green Hills, and Springfield Township with Warner Cable. Opinions expressed are those of the independent producer and do not necessarily represent the Community Programming Board, volunteers and staff of the Waycross Studio, the community governments, or the cable company. If you have questions regarding this program, or if you would like to participate in the activities of Waycross, call 825-2429.